My name is Laura Sant, like Katie said, and I am from Franklin County Extension. So that's down in Preston, so down south. Mine is on Artisan bread, and who doesn't love fresh homemade bread? I love it. But when I talk to a lot of other people, they won't make bread because they think it's too hard. Well, tonight I'm going to show you an easy recipe that is also quite cost effective. Because if you look at artisan bread even in a grocery store, it's pretty pricey. So I compared the prices and I noticed that it was a third to a half of as much less to make my own. So you're just going to save a third to a half by making your own. So tonight I'm going to make a Thanksgiving cranberry artisan cornbread. And it's actually adapted from the artisan bread in 5 minutes a day. Have you guys heard of them? They're great. So easy. By Jeff Hertzberg and Zoe Francois. So if you're interested in artisan bread, check them out because they have a lot of great ideas. It's a little bit different than traditional cornbread because it's a yeast bread. And traditional cornbread is a quick bread, so it uses a different leavening. It uses baking soda or baking powder for traditional one, and this one's just yeast. So enough talk, let's get started. I have a tablespoon and a half of yeast, 3 cups of lukewarm water that I'm going to just dissolve by dumping on top. Then I'm just going to dump the rest of the ingredients in. 5 cups of flour. This is just all-purpose flour. 1.5 cups of cornmeal. And a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of kosher salt. And then you just mix it up. The recipe says, oh, use a Danish whisk. This is what a Danish whisk is. It's supposed to be easier to mix it with, but it's definitely not necessary. You can always just use a regular spoon or even one of these wooden spoons. So that you just mix it up until all of the dry ingredients are moist. And so it takes a little bit of work to get it completely moist.
Does that make the dough curd?
Darn it, no it isn't.
Where did you get your Danish whisk?
Amazon, my favorite shopping place of all time.
So local places like Russians or anything?
I would assume like your specialty cooking stores would have them.
Russians. And I never call them.
So because we live in a dry climate, sometimes you might need just a little bit more water to get all of your ingredients moist. So go ahead and maybe add a tablespoon more water or something so you can just get all of your ingredients moist, because this is a very moist dough and you want it to be a very moist dough. So once you've got it mixed up, you're going to go ahead and you're going to put a lid on it, but not all the way tight. You want it just loose so that there's room for it to leaven. And you're going to let it sit at room temperature for 2 hours. Then once it's at room temperature for 2 hours, you can go ahead and make it into bread right then, or you can put it into the fridge to make bread later. And you can store it in the fridge for up to a week to 2 weeks. The longer you store it in the fridge, the more of a sourdough flavor it will get. One reason to store it in the fridge, even if it's only temporarily, like an hour, is it makes it a lot easier to handle. It's quite sticky if it's just been on the counter. But if it's in the fridge and cooled down, it's not quite as sticky. So I'm going to see if my good friend Lori, can you go and get the dough out of the fridge? Whoops, forgot. Here it is. So this is some dough that I mixed up earlier today and it's raised, and I put it in the fridge. And this is what it looks like. So you see it raises quite a bit, and this is even once you put it in the fridge, it shrinks a little bit. So when you're ready to handle it, you're going to sprinkle just a little bit of flour on top to help deal with the moistness so it doesn't stick quite as well. And I'm gonna spray just a little bit of nonstick spray on the counter because I don't like a lot of flour on my bread. Then you just, for this loaf, it takes half of the dough. So you just pull out half of the dough and you make it into a little ball by rolling the edges around to the underneath. So once you have your ball, now if I was just making the traditional artisan bread in 5 minutes, you would be done. But this one has a few other ingredients in it, so they recommend that you roll it out till it's about 1/2 inch thick. Then we're going to add sugar, 2 tablespoons of sugar. And I'm just going to spread it around because that's not very even. 1/2 of an orange micro zested. Do you guys know what micro zested is? It's basically, it's just a really fine grater that you just take the orange peel off with. So I'm going to sprinkle that on. And then 1/3 cup of cranberries, dried cranberries. If you want to use fresh ones, you can. 1/2 cup of the fresh ones. So I'm just going to spread it out a little bit more. Now you roll it up like a jelly roll. I'm using my cranberries, that's the best part. Then you roll it underneath again to mix it up. And you're going to roll it out one more time to fit into a cast iron skillet. Do you need a cast iron skillet to do this? You don't. But it makes a nice little flavor and texture using the cast iron skillet. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to spray this with a little nonstick spray. You can also use oil or anything else you like to grease with. And it's a little sticky. So I'm going to put some more flour on. Go ahead and roll it out as big as you can to fit in to your cast iron skillet. You let it raise for 1.5 to 2 hours at room temperature. Then you bake it in an oven at 425 for 25 or more minutes, depending on the thickness of your bread and lots of other things. When that's done, this is what I got. Are there any questions? To get an artisan bread crust, which is kind of a thick, crunchier crust, you can use steam, cook it with steam. So basically what you would do is you would preheat the broiler pan on the bottom rack of the oven about 1/2 hour beforehand. Then when you put it in, you put your bread on the top rack, and then you take a cup of water and dump it into the broiler pan and quickly shut the door to get a steamed environment, and that will create the nice little crust that a lot of people like. Are there any other questions? Thank you so much.